So I am a fairly new artist to the scene. I have been on Instagram and TikTok for a couple of years, but I've never really actually posted long form content. I have posted old videos on YouTube of I think 2 or 3 of my pieces that didn't do typically well, and I have essentially kind of lost that page because I can't get into that email. So here we are starting over our YouTube channel. So of course, first we're starting off with my sketch, but I do want to say I know a lot of people have heard this before, but it doesn't hurt to, hear it, especially with a process video. But here I am using a colored erasable pencil. It is Prismacolor. And if you haven't heard it before, typically people will use this as an option to do their sketches with in order to, whenever they're doing their rendering, to not have the regular pencil mix with their colored pencil or whatever medium that they're using. But that does not mean that you can't use, because for myself, I still do use mechanical pencils to do some sketches, especially when I'm on the go or really just any time. But I will use a kneaded eraser to kind of lighten my sketch because I do sketch very dark. Typically whenever I'm using a regular pencil, it's not really something that I can help. I've tried because I am very sketchy, if you can't tell from this sketch right here, because it's still very light compared to what it actually looked like on the paper itself. But yeah. Now I did use watercolor for the majority of the background for the pink, red tones that I used. Now I don't really know what brand this watercolor palette is because it was given to me by a friend a very, very long time ago. And I'm so thankful that this little palette is still kicking. I'm pretty sure I got this palette from my friend, I think in my junior year or my sophomore year. And I am almost 22 now, so I've had it for quite some years at this point. Now, I don't know about a lot of people, but I know for me personally, I prefer to use marker as my underlay for my colored pencils. I typically like to use marker because I get a lot more of a saturated, vibrant look whenever I use marker under my colored pencils versus just using colored pencils on their own. And it takes me a lot less time in order for my process whenever I'm rendering, because with colored pencils, like many people know, that you have to keep layering and layering and layering with colored pencils in order to get a seamless look that kind of looks realistic when you look at it without having a bunch of texture, but still having like the good amount of texture, if you get what I mean. I don't know if that made any sense, but it made sense in my head. But yes, I am really solidified in that as a art tip, to use marker, or I've also used watercolor and ink to do the same process like once or twice with both individually, but I still prefer marker because I get a lot more control. It honestly is the brushes that I have. I do need to get more of a artist level brushes in order to get the outcome that I want when it comes down to watercolor and ink. because Walmart brushes don't do it as well as I would like them to. So that's something I do want to upgrade to later down the line. With that, if anybody has any recommendations on inking and watercolor brushes, please let me know. And acrylic too. But I do want to try oil paint eventually. So really, any recommendations and tips that you could give, these are all things that I would love to indulge in later. I love watercolor, but I definitely need different brushes so I can get the type of detail that I am looking for. Now, something else is that if you're going to go look for alcohol markers to try this process for yourself, or if you even already have alcohol markers, personally, if you see in the video, I do not have the brush tip markers, because there was a issue. I bought these markers about 5 years ago, and when I first bought them, I was sent the wrong type of brushes. I bought them off Amazon. Markers. I bought them off Amazon and they sent me the wrong type. They sent me the fine tip and the chiseled instead of the brush tip and chiseled. And so whenever I went to go send them back to get the ones I wanted, they told me, the brush tip ones. Wait, no, that's not how it went. They sent them the same pack of markers back to me and told me that was the brush tip. And I was like, no, when I opened it, these are not brush tip. These are chiseled. And I sent pictures to them to show them that these are not the ones I ordered. And they told me later, it took, I think, a couple weeks to actually get any feedback from them to say, the brush tip ones are sold out. And of course, I did not want to spend another, almost $200 to buy the brush tip ones. So I have been just making it work with these ever since then. And it's not really bad, of course. It's not something I'm, essentially mad about, because yes, the chiseled marker and the fine tip, they do give me more control, but that's also why I feel like I can't use brushes. I have such issues using brushes, but it does give me more control. And because I don't really do marker pieces, I don't really do just marker typically, I still am able to get a seamless look with it because I'm always covering the marker completely with colored pencil. So if that's something that somebody was worried about, of whether they had to get the brush tip or if they could get away with using fine tip markers or even highlighters, really, you can see throughout my video that yes, you do not have to worry about whether it's fine tip, chiseled, or anything of that nature. You could use that. You don't have to, go out and buy extra materials if you already have it, or if you can't find brush tip markers in the brand that you're wanting, because I'm not going to lie, when it comes down to my markers and my colored pencils, I typically stay within the same brands because these are just the brands that have done me best. So I usually stick with Azteca and Prismacolor when it comes down to my colored pencils, and Prismacolor and Ahuhu when it comes down to my markers. But unfortunately, I did give my little sister my Ahuhu markers that I had whenever she told me that she wanted to start using markers in her art. And this little one, unfortunately, has not really used them much at all since I gave them to her. So I kind of, unfortunately, regret it because I have not been able to buy another set of Ahuhu markers. Because, we have bills, still in school, struggling student. But yes, that is my tidbit on markers. Now, something else I have to mention is that I did have a reference photo for this. I found the photo on Pinterest, but I cannot for the life of me find it now because of, again, it's been 2 years, over 2 years really, since I did this piece. And so I honestly can't find the reference photo, but I was a my bad. It was a model that I used this picture for, and I'm pretty sure, I may be wrong. If I can find the reference photo at any time later, maybe I'll add it. But I think I only used the picture for the pose itself and not for the skin tone, but I'm not really sure. Because I am well versed in color theory, I typically don't have to use references for skin tone unless it's been a skin tone that I haven't done before or has been very long since I've done it. So for this piece specifically, I was looking for a really deep, rich skin tone. And I know that a lot of people tend to say that they have a lot of issues when it comes down to darker skin tones. I'm going to give my tips for doing darker skin tones. So yes, you can use the markers to give your do a lot of the work for you, especially when it comes down to saturation, not having to use so many layers of color pencils, etc., etc. But when it comes down to reaching certain levels of skin tone with realism, you're always going to have to use undertones. Now, really, that goes for any skin tone, whether it's very pale or the darkest of night skin tone, because there are no skin tones out there that don't have a undertone, multiple undertones within their skin. And I have seen many artists out there that whenever drawing darker skin, they tend to use a lot of gray. When it comes down to digital art, they tend to use like a lot of gray, or go straight to black for darker skin tones, especially for shading. But again, you can't do that. It makes the picture look muddy. It makes it look horrible, because that's not how our skin tone works. And as someone who is, of a darker skin tone, I have family that I look at as well, so I see these different tones within people's skin all the time. To be able to know that whenever drawing someone with a warmer shade or a cooler shade, you have to be able to tell. You have to be able to train your eye to be able to tell whenever, even just looking at someone whenever in conversation, oh, this person has like blues and purples in their skin, or they have green undertone, or pink and orange. It's kind of something that has developed within me to like subconsciously be to look at someone's face and kind of think like, oh, they're kind of yellow or something like that. And yeah, I study people's faces a lot. But regardless of the fact, yes, you do need to have to pay attention to undertone. Now with this, I was kind of going for skin tone that was closer to mine. So I do have a warmer undertone. I have a lot of orange and pink undertone within the middle of my face, but then once you go to the outer parts, I do have a more purple and some blues within my hyperpigmentation areas. So I was kind of using myself as a kind of a reference for this. So yeah, you'd have to also know to be able to tell where to add the undertones and the placement. Placement also very much matters, because whenever doing contour or the T area, which would be the nose and the forehead, and some would consider it to be the cheeks as well. Those are typically highlighted areas. So what colors are you looking at that are going to be the highlights of your portrait? You have to learn how to be able to pick those colors and pick them correctly. And something else I've also noticed, that with a lot of people, they don't tend to draw darker skin tones with the palms of hand to make the palms lighter. You can't really have a realistic drawing of a black person or even a dark skin colored person of any other race or ethnic background without having lighter palms. It's just not realistic. But that's I'm not going to say that's really a lot of realism artists that do that. It's mostly anime artists, and I know that's more of a stylistic choice. So that's not something I'm going to really get into. But I remember a couple years ago, it used to be like a discourse thing to on Twitter, that a lot of people would just discard the whole lighter palms thing, or say that it wasn't real or anything like that. And it's like, have you never seen a black person in real life to see that we have lighter palms? it was quite a few years back, but decided to go ahead and bring it up. And if this is not something that you didn't know already, whenever blending undertones with the skin tone that you're choosing to use, especially for something with as a darker skin tone as this, you will do your undertones first and then go in with the main skin tone focus, but then on top of that you will go in with another lighter color to add the depth further. Now what I mean by that is that if you're looking, whenever I am coloring using my oranges, my pinks, my purples, I am doing them all in the certain areas. Usually I will use the cool tones in areas that will be darker, which would be like under the neck, around shadow areas, around the perimeter of the face, and then use pink and orange within the middle areas that are going to be more highlighted. That is how I create my depth with a warm skin tone. But once I am finished with that, I will add on top the color, which I'm pretty sure it was the dark umber within the palette of colored pencils. That typically is a color that I go for the most whenever doing darker skin tones. And then on top, as I use the dark umber to color over all of the colors, I will use a lighter brown. I can't remember the name of it specifically at the moment, but I will go over with a lighter brown that still has that warm undertone to it in the highlighted areas. Now within the face itself, I typically will use that lighter brown first and then keep going back and forth, layering between that dark umber and that lighter brown to get the look that I'm looking for. But for the chest area and the shoulders, I colored all of it with dark umber on top of my undertones, and then went in with the lighter brown to add my depth and highlights. And then for the parts that are more raised and should be highlighted, like the cheekbones or the shoulder, the collarbone, I will use peach first, like a peachy color first, and then if I feel necessary, we'll go over with white. Now, to further put an explanation on why, it is because that with color pencils of this nature that are the oil-based soft core color pencils, it's not just Prismacolor, but you have Faber-Castell or Azteca, etc. of colored pencils that have that oil base. You want to use lighter colors on top to blend out what you're doing. And I kind of see that, even though I haven't really tried oil paint myself, it's kind of, if you have done it yourself, I have seen that oil painters kind of do the same thing in some degree, that they laid their undertones and their dark colors first on top, and then go in with their lighter colors on top. Usually paint dark first, because I do watch a lot of oil paint videos. But with that, you typically with oils, you typically want to do that for the sake of blending. Because with lighter colors, people typically say to use white to blend, but that's not just exclusive to using white. Especially if you are going over someone with a darker skin tone. Like, this is what I would consider a dark skin tone. As someone who is black myself, this is what I would consider a darker skin tone. So with darker skin tones like this, you don't necessarily want to go to white first to do your blending, because then you could kind of give a ghostly shadow to kind of make the color look a little bit ashy, unless it's already a cool tone picture. If it's already a cool tone skin tone, if you get what I mean. Now, if you were using more of just like a cooler tone pink and purple and blue, then yes, you could more likely use white to blend your colors after you lay over that darker skin tone, which would be the dark umber. But I still typically would go towards a definitely a lighter brown before I use white, so that I don't get the ashy look, unless that's what I'm going for because of lighting or something of that nature. Just to keep the skin tone actually looking cohesive and natural, that's what you would want to do first. Like white and colors that are close to white are what you would use later, like after, when you feel like you still need more. And so with this technically being my first video for this page, I did want to pull out one of my old art pieces that I never really actually finished the editing for this video back when I did it, which this piece is, I'm pretty sure, about 2 years old. So yes, I have changed some of my process since then. Not much, not by a substantial amount, but you know, just a little tweaks here and there. But I still am very proud of this piece because this was the first realistic portrait that I had did back then in a long time. I want to say that when I did this piece, I hadn't really touched realism in about 3 years before that. I had mostly been working with my style and everything like that, so I was pretty much proud of this piece and how it came out. It was supposed to really be just a regular sketch in my book, but kind of turned into a highly rendered piece. And so of course with that, I really do want to show the process. Now, I did try to edit this video to be as short as I could get it, but my art process does take me quite a few hours. the full on editing material that I had was over 9 hours long. So I definitely did cut out and speed up a lot in order to get it to be the time that it is. So hopefully that doesn't really bother too many people with how long the video is, but it is still essentially showing the majority of my process. So I didn't want to cut too much out to have you miss anything. So let me know if I should cut more or not speed up as much. What should I do? Give me some feedback on how to make my videos better for the future. Also, please do note that in the shadow areas, yes, I do use black in order to define those shadow areas after. I I heavily want to emphasize, use black after. Use it after you feel like you have gotten to a good point with the skin tone. And that you are satisfied with how it looks, because once you go in with black, not saying that you can't really cover it, but it will take a long time. So what I do with the black, once I have finished with the skin tone how I want it, I will go in with black in the shadow areas, the deep shadow areas, and then blend it back out with the dark umber. And that is how I get my shadows to look the way they do. And I like to keep them at a precise, not to let them, bleed in to make the colors more muddy. I really, really want to emphasize on that, because that is something that, is kind of easy to forget whenever trying to create shadows. Now for the hair, I did just go in with my black. Now this is something that I have changed over the years, is how I do my afros. I do go in with more color now to give more depth to the afro itself, but just for the sake of this video, I colored over all with black and then kept my pencil sharpened. You can see that my pencil is dying. My little baby is over here just getting so much smaller and smaller and smaller, but I kept my pencil sharpened to do these small little curls around the perimeter of the fro, for, to show the texture, to show that it's supposed to be a kinkier texture, a coily texture. And then I kind of went in with white, just kind of at random, to go in to give more highlights. But now I would do more grays and kind of focus more on the curls themselves to try to give more of the pattern, or to also just add more detail. So another video with that will probably be coming out soon, especially if anyone is interested to see how I do it now. Now for parts I did cut out of the video are parts that are pretty repetitive, but except the acrylic flowers, I did use the paint apple barrel from Walmart, the 50 cent to $1 tubes of paint. That's usually what I use whenever I'm doing acrylic for something small that's on top of a piece that's not solely acrylic. So I did use a certain technique in order to get my flower petals to look the way they do. So if anyone is interested in a tutorial on how I do that, I would love to deliver that. It just kind of makes everything look a little bit more magical. To add the dots, makes it look like a little starry. I'm very obsessed with like stars and everything, so a lot of my drawings do have that, whether it's digital or traditional, that it does have that either within the face to have the white dots, or to be able to have that around the perimeter. I just love it. And then of course I also love gold when I'm doing these types of drawings, so I did add gold little beads throughout the afro. And yes, this is how she looks. This is her final. I hope you love it. And if you want to see more works like this from me, please like and subscribe, and leave anything in the comments that you would like to see from me further, any other type of tutorial videos or explanations. commentary, anything of the above. I'm still kind of building this channel to know what kind of content I want to pursue. I do want to pursue a commentary background a little bit with certain things I find about interesting. But yes, well, all have a nice day. Love you.